So what happens when a comic shop overorders a title? Where do those comics go? If you go into a comic shop regularly, you see that title, that shelf refreshed. So where are the unsold comics going? Hey there, this is Perch. This may be a very obvious video in the grand scheme of things, but I've been asked this question a lot, which is, the predicting what your customers are going to buy in a world where there's no returnability means that when you don't sell product, it's yours. You bought it, you paid for it, you own it. So what happens to those comics? Because if you go into a comic shop and it's like week 3 or week 4, what I mean by that, I should explain, is like a new comic comes out, that's kind of day 0. And then 1 week on the shelf is week 1, and 2 weeks on the shelf is week 2, and so on and so on. And generally, the titles, unless the publishers double ship meaning they say it's a monthly title, but they ship 2 titles in 1 month because they're kind of juicing the numbers or they're trying to get more out of it. Over shipping is when you order something and they give you more of what you ordered. Those two get confused a lot. But anyway, so generally you have a title, it's on the shelf, and you're hoping that that number of title, you use kind of this math. In a perfect world, a healthy world where you've got customers coming in the door buying new comics, and you have customers who are not coming in every week and picking up comics, you want to be able to have enough product for everybody. So in theory, in week 1, from day 0 to week 1, you're selling about 75% of your stock, what you ordered. And then in week 2, that next week, you're selling about another 10%, which takes you to 85. And then in week 3, you're selling another 5%, which takes you to 90% sold. And then you have a new comic, the next issue coming out the week after that. So that model leaves you with some, stock, some unsold comics, but a very small number. It's perfect if you have a very tiny number of unsold comics that can go into a bin for back issues and so on. Back issue trade is healthy. That's where markup can occur. That's where collectors come in, they want to run, and you want to be able to service them by saying, hey, you want this whole run of, Detective Comics? Well, great. We've got all the issues here, and some will cost more than others, but we got you hooked up. So that's a perfect world, is if it's kind of running in that system. Now, some will tell you that the new comic issue trade, their perfect world is, in day 0 to week 1, that first week, that you sell 100% and it's just gone. And that's selling out, and that's a good thing too. Everybody likes it when things sell out. But the challenge that you have as a store owner is if you have empty spots on your shelves where things sold out, and people come in on, say, day 8, and they want the comic and you don't have it, they're going to go look for it somewhere else. I mean, they want the comic in most cases. So it's not necessarily great to sell out immediately, because you then are driving traffic to other stores. And if somebody is going to the other store, chances are they're not just going to buy one comic, they're going to buy a few. And then if they have the hookup better than you do, then the business kind of shifts in that direction. So you want to kind of just get it just right of selling these comics. Now, the challenge is that for a variety of reasons, either the comic was ordered and then the artist or creative team shifted to a lesser desirable artist. So let's say you order 100 copies of Detective Comics and it's saying it's going to have, Jim Lee drawing it. And then, after you've already ordered and committed, comes out as like, well, Jim Lee's going to draw the cover and not all the issues. And you're like, okay, well, that's a drop. Okay. And then let's say new news comes out that says Jim Lee's going to draw, his art is going to be on variant covers. So you'll be getting, 1/10 of your orders will be Jim Lee's, and the rest will be, kind of no-name artists that we found cheap down in South America, and and just not a name and anything else. So now suddenly the demand for this issue that you ordered 100 copies of has dropped significantly. It's too late for you to return them. So, or lower your order, cancel things. So now you're left with a situation where, let's say in day 0 to week 1, you sell 10% of your stock. That's always the nightmare scenario. You order 100, You sold 10. You got 90 copies kind of sitting around. Now you know that on week 2, and not everybody's going to just come in the store and suddenly buy up those copies. It's always diminishing returns unless somebody in the comic manages to locate like a penis or a bad word that's written on a billboard in the comic, and then suddenly it gets on Fox News, and then people are like coming into your store wanting to buy it. That kind of stuff happens occasionally, but I mean, we're talking once every 2-3 years at most. Something like that will happen where demand in week 2 will go up for an existing title. So generally, if you're in that situation, you know you're going to be stuck with a lot of backstock. So now what do you do with that backstock? Well, it's not conceivable to throw 90 copies of this, dud Detective Comics into a long box and have it in your back issue pile. Your back issue pile quickly grows to be larger than your shop if you have a situation like that. And it's also just not good optics to have that thick of a stack on the shelf or in the box. It says nobody wanted this issue. It says that on the shelf, and it really says that in a back issue box. Nobody wanted this, so why would you? So then it becomes a task of how does the shop recover their money, as much of their money as possible. And you might start off by doing a reduction in cost. So you have a dollar bin, so to speak. Unfortunately, if you're selling a current modern comic at $1, you are taking a loss. That's just going to be a fact of the situation you're now in, because it costs the store more than $1 to bring in the store. But your loss is, modest compared to what could be, instead of losing, $1.80, you're now losing 80 cents. So that's better than nothing. You're moving your stock out of your store. But sometimes the dollar bin gets quite large. There are shops that kind of get into that period where they ordered too much. And the other problem with the dollar bin kind of bin or that area is, one, it is bad optics for your store. It says that, hey, these comics aren't selling, so you can get them cheap. And that's not necessarily the best message. Now, from a customer standpoint, a lot of customers like the dollar bin box, and I'm not saying that that it should go away. It's inherent to comic shops these days. But the dollar bin whole situation doesn't necessarily look good for your shop. And if you have too many copies of something in there, even if you slash the price to $1, it still turns away readers. I mean, there's something kind of mentally about seeing a stack of like 90 copies of a comic after it's been out for 3 weeks that just, it's a negative. And then if you put those 90 comics in a dollar bin box, it really just reinforces the message of this thing didn't sell. So we're marking it cheap, and you can have it. It's kind of like if you go to the grocery store, and I don't know if they do that as much in the States, but they used to do this thing where you had meat, and then you had like old meat. You had this little section where the meat would be, old and starting to kind of go gray, and it just looks funky. And, there are certainly people who will buy old meat. It's cheaper, cost affordable, fits their budget, great. But still, you're buying old meat. And so 90 copies of whatever it might be, the newest Captain America, the newest Detective Comic, whatever it is, 90 copies of something feels like old, stinky, gray meat. And it's not attractive for people. So that's the problem, is that you get yourself into that situation quite easily. So how else can you get rid of these things? Well, a big vehicle that more and more people are using, I'm noticing, is that they take the comics to a half-price books or a shop like that, and they dump them there. Now, if you're doing that kind of situation there, you're lucky if you're getting 10, 25 cents for that comic. That's where you're really taking a bath, but you're getting it out of the store and you're recovering some money, just not anywhere close to what you spent. Some places I'm always surprised by this. I shouldn't be, but their mini comic shops have either a garage somewhere on premises, or if they don't have access to that, they have a storage unit. You ever been by the big kind of orange and white storage unit facilities where they're dumping, you can store your crap that can't fit in your house anymore, or maybe you're moving. Well, it's pretty common that comic shops have one of those, or somebody is paying for a storage unit of these comics. Unfortunately, that means you're now paying whatever the $250 to $400 for a little storage closet somewhere a month, where you're now storing all the comics that you can't sell in your shop. That is called, to use kind of very stark terms, that gets to be called something like a death spiral, because now you've got comics that aren't selling, you've got them in a location where people can't see them, and you're paying to store them there, and it's just a bad situation. And I think some comic shop owners have this kind of dream that some collector comes in or that buys them all, or more likely, some new shop wants to open up, and so they come and they can kind of sell off mass quantities of stuff in the storage unit. And there are always shops that do different things, and I think that's, I really want to stress that there are shops that prioritize new issues, there are shops that prioritize old issues, and the psychology and the mentality is different from what you store and what you keep. But generally speaking, if the comic doesn't sell, it has to go somewhere. So the first goal is to kind of recover the money. The next goal is to kind of put it aside and hope that, someday there's a reason why it might come back into favor and you can bring it out. Dollar bin kind of things, typically, you need to wait 6 months at least. I know some shops will wait 2 years before they move things into a dollar bin. So, so you can get some kind of old issue feeling from it. But that stock, it can start to overwhelm you. And then before long, you've got just way more product on hand you know what to do with. But anyway, so that wasn't such a short video, but hopefully it answered the question. What happened to these comics? Well, they go somewhere. Unfortunately, not home to customers. But that's a situation going on when comics don't sell. A couple people had the assumption that if comics don't sell after a couple months, you could send them back to the publisher, and the publisher would do something with them. I do know one shop, hilariously, that got so angry. This might, this won't tip anybody off, but they got so mad at a bunch of comics not selling that they took them to a UPS store. They boxed up like 9 big boxes of comics, and they just shipped them back to I think to DC and Marvel, and just said, screw it, you a-holes are going to have to deal with this giant box because I'm tired of dealing with it. And the I remember one of the companies, I do not know which one, accepted the comics, or at least it was delivered and then went somewhere, nobody knows. The other one, and I want to say it was DC, rejected the box. So it just they said, nope, we're not taking this. You send it back, and the boxes just reappeared in like 4 weeks. It was an interesting moment in comic industry. Anyway, there you have it. So if you have any questions on all this, leave me a comment below. What would you do? Maybe you have an amazing idea that can help comic store owners. What would you do with old stock? Love to hear those ideas. Like, subscribe if you don't mind. Always happy to have those. And thanks for listening.